We will top this. Don't worry. We will edit the bits.
It's okay.
Out.
I can edit and cut out. It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right.
Yeah. Great.
Off we go.
Hello, Sensei. Today I have with me arguably the greatest in modern history, or one of the greats, Neil Adams, two-time Olympic medalist, world champion, and easily the greatest Jujigatame of all time. I just want to say thank you for all the records and all the tutorials you have done throughout the decades. My first Jujigatame that I hit in competition, it was Newaza Cup 2 years ago, and it was your Jujigatame with the Adams and Briggs. Great stuff. Thank you so much. And of course, all the other stuff, like the commentary on the Inoue DVD. That's how I got to hit my Ochigari and all the other techniques. So I'm very happy I have you here with me today. I still cannot believe it.
It's an absolute honor. Honestly, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm honored that it was the Juji and you're having success with it. Brilliant.
Thank you, Sensei. So today we have a few topics to discuss. The first one, it's not going to be such an easy topic because it almost coincides with the climate of today's world and education, and that is the topic of mental health. And I do believe Judo has a vital role to play in the future. This is something that has touched me personally, I have to say. So I really want to put emphasis on this. The thing with mental health, yes, there are so many situations, so many anecdotes. Everyone's different, I understand that. But when it comes to having like that cloud hanging above your head, and to the point where sometimes it can get to, I would say, suicidal tendencies, I have framed it through my own experiences and the studies that I have done. It's going to be either, you know, two camps. The first one being, how do I explain this? Like whatever, like the sense of whatever you are in, the situation or the feeling or whatever, it is somewhat permanent, and thus there's no escape, and the only escape is to just basically end it all, or I don't know, many things. And the other one is this feeling of being powerless, and almost coincides with shame in a sense. So one example, 20 years ago we lost Isao Inokuma. He had his business, he was already an Olympian, he's a champion, but his business failed towards the end of his life, and he felt that, you know, he couldn't recover from that, and eventually he committed seppuku. We have also Gunji Koizumi, who was the father of British Judo. He was fighting this illness, and it was terminal. He was already, I believe, 78 years old. He wore his tuxedo. He shaved. He sat in his favorite chair, and then put his bag on his head. So he felt that he could not survive it, but also he wanted to prove that, you know, the power is mine, I'm controlling my own ending. So he did not want to feel powerless in a sense. But the majority of the youth, I would say, you know, teenagers, 20s, 30s, 40s, it's mostly about, you know, not getting out of whatever you are in. And it can be mitigated through, I would say, many practices such as judo, arts, music. And I'll give an example. Here in Paris, we have what is called the Suicide Prevention Center. And one of their activities, or few activities, are art class, music, and also creative writing, I believe. What do all these have in common, including judo? If you want to add judo to the mix, it's the first one being self-expression, which is something very hard to do. Two, learning a type of skill that will give you some kind of confidence. And also, finally, like a series of small short-term goals, which also is ultimately give you the sense that, you know, tomorrow is going to be different. So couple that with the power of judo, the strategies that we build, the techniques, the physical strength that we built with it, I do believe that judo can have this effect, and also, you know, change the life to the best. Like before, you know, what we call traumas or incidents, you know, a life is, you know, when someone is looking back, I would say, you know, I can attest to that. It's, you know, before the incident and after the incident. And obviously that turn is for the worst. But, you know, when I started, you know, painting and doing martial arts, my life took another turn, but it was for the best. And I do believe that we can do that. When recently we lost two great champions, Jack Hatton and Craig Fallon, nobody like mentioned the term suicide or a mental illness. And you did your podcast about mental health, and I'm very grateful for it. But the fact that nobody mentioned it or even talked about it almost made me angry and somewhat disappointed, because like I said, this is something that has touched me a little bit personally. Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say in all of this, you know, similar to Kano's days when jiu-jitsu and Japan, all of it was going through a switch, instead of discarding it as an old practice, he says, wait, you know, let's put it in our education. I do believe it has a lot of things that it can help with the youth, with the people, with society. And now with the evolution of studies of mental health and, you know, the awareness of it all, I do believe that judo can do the same what Kano did before and say, you know, let's put it in that too. So what are your thoughts on this?
Firstly, I think that I've kind of experienced many of those things that you've just talked about. And I think when it comes to what's happened with Craig and Jack Hatton, Craig Fallon and Jack Hatton, I think it's only that I think we're kind of half defending and protecting family. And I think that we would like to go into it in a lot more detail. Me for sure. I mean, we feel quite strongly about it. I mean, I really have felt many of those things that you've said. And I've felt at times, you know, when I lost 2 Olympic gold medals, and for me, it was losing 2 Olympic gold medals, not winning 2 silvers. And I was bereft, you know, I was very down for a long time. It's something that I had nightmares about because I just didn't quite achieve everything that I wanted to achieve. I was world champion, European champion, and 2 Olympic silver medals, 2 different categories, but it wasn't enough. And I knew that I could do better. So that was one thing, how to cope with that. And the other thing was when I was not performing as well, you know, when my level started to go down, or when I became, I had to face the possibility that I had to finish competition and competitive judo, which was very difficult for me. And I know it's very, very difficult for a lot of fighters, because they have this amazing life where they do some amazing things. They travel to amazing places and they have success, which puts them on top of the world. And then all of a sudden it stops and you have to reconsider your direction in life and what else you're going to do, what you're going to do to make money, how you fit into normal society. And I think that that is a shock. And it's one of the main reasons that many fighters put off their retirement. You know, they carry on 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes 4 years too long. But it's not too long for them. But, you know, there's nothing worse than not performing at your best. So I think that I've experienced all of that. And I've also experienced something quite unique. Just a few weeks ago, I had COVID. I contracted COVID and I was in between. I was in doing work for the IJF commentary. And I was in between Georgia and also, where else were we? We were in stuck. I'm just trying to think. I'll think of the name. Anyway, we were in between competitions, and so what happened was I contracted. It was Turkey, in between Turkey. So I contracted COVID, and I was put into isolation. And I've never been that ill before. I was very sick. But I was on my own. IJF, International Judo Federation, my wife especially was contacting me every single day, 3-4 times a day. But I was ill on my own with no real guide as to whether I was really sick, whether I should be admitted into hospital or whether, and I had to go somewhere where I hadn't been for a long time. I had to dig in somewhere and say, right, I need to make myself better and I need to get my head in the right place, because I was in four walls and no contact with anybody physically. And I had to stay there until COVID left and it went away from me. So that was, I hadn't experienced that for a little while, that feeling of, of not knowing, and that feeling of having to get my mind in a different place, redirect my mind. And I think that that is one of the key points with a lot of people that have finished competition, that are going through depression, don't know what job they're going to do next, and people don't really understand what they're feeling. And I think that that's one of the main points here, is that people don't really know what's happening inside their heads. And so this desperation sets in, and depression. And especially, I mean, we have had, haven't we, the most incredible 16 months, 17 months. And it's turned the whole world on its head, and everybody has had to redirect either their work or their social life for sure. And the amount of contact that they have with family has decreased. And so, you know, there's been a lot of depression, I think, especially in the latter half of this COVID period. But it's been difficult for everybody. And I think that Jigoro Kano's teachings, you know, what he originally set it up for, Judo, was not just an education for Judo, physical exercise, but also for the mental exercises as well.
Yeah. So do you believe that maybe something can be done, for example, a few times a year, seminars about this topic, or it can not infiltrate, but get in, become a part of the activities for mental health, like art, or as a means of expression, and also as a mean of, you know, empowering someone that's feeling desperate, that's feeling powerless? That, do you think that we can create some type of a program or curriculum, or any way that, for example, I myself have thought about visiting that suicide prevention center and do a presentation of my own. Now, obviously, with the what's going on now, I cannot do that, but it's something that has crossed my mind. So and also, well,
I think it's very important that we do. I know that the UK, we've just started we have an organization now where if somebody is having problems and mental problems and finding it difficult to cope, then there are mentors that can help. But I think that at the moment, people are not coming, they're not expressing themselves, and perhaps are a little afraid to breach it, because there's the stigma of something not quite being right with the point of mental health. And I think that it's something that, like you said, maybe it needs one or two of us to go out there and to give honest opinions and honest accounts of things that have happened to us at different times in our lives that we've had to cope with. And I think that it's imperative, because we talk about physical exercise, immediately people look at somebody that's overweight and they talk about the physical program that they need to participate in, but nobody looks into the, you know, somebody can be in great shape and look physically in good condition, but actually in a bad way, be at a bad place in their lives, you know. And I think that we need to have it so that people can access it, and able to access it in an easier way. And to tell you the truth, I'm not quite sure the best way of doing that, because I think that people are reluctant, and they are perhaps a little embarrassed about it, which is why they keep quiet about it. I think that we need to make it more accessible.
Yes, I agree 100%. Like, one of the great things that it can teach you, the mental fortitude. For example, someone goes into judo, they have that one guy in class, he hits them with 3 serenages, 5 serenages, whatever it may be, and you feel helpless. You come back, you start to study, you look at fighting films footage, and then the next time you start to defend a little bit better. He hits you with 2 instead of 5. The next time it's it's a close tie. You're defensive, you're not attacking, but he cannot throw you anymore. Next time you become a little bit more offensive, and then until finally you are able to beat that training partner. If we take that strategical mentality and also that relentless mentality outside, I think we can fight life's greatest battles with this mentality. Like, for example, when I say back in 2013, when I started martial arts and started becoming a painter and looking for expos, it's not that my life suddenly became like this wonderful dream, but I had many battles that were even harder than the stuff that happened to me when I was growing up, and I was able to fight them. It was thanks to this mentality that I had won on the mat. So sometimes we have something, but we do not know the value of it. So it's absolutely crucial, in my opinion, to keep pointing the finger that we are being taught this. Do not forget this. I think that's very important.
Well, I think one of the most important things, it's one thing learning a technique. It's another thing being able to adapt to your opponent moving and doing different things to you, and then adapting to the movement to enable yourself to be able to work that technique. And the thing is I think the same in life. We have to adapt. We've certainly had to adapt over the last 18 months. And I think that many of us have found it difficult. I think it's affected a lot of people that have been thrown into certain situations. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people have not been able to exercise. Some people have not been able to do the things that they love with their families. And I think that that's had a really big knock-on effect to the world. I mean, we've seen how, I work with a truly international group of people within the International Judo Federation. And we have a great collaboration between us. And it's amazing how all over the world, whether it's in Georgia, whether it's in Russia, whether it's in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, all of these different places, I have friends in every one of them, and we've all been affected by it. Every one of us has been affected by it, and we've been, exchanging stories. But I think for me, the strength, the thing that I've learned from this COVID situation is that I have had to adapt. And I was very fortunate that just prior to the first lockdown, the first really serious outbreak of COVID, that we built a dojo. And I'd had a dojo before for 20 years, but I hadn't had one for a while. And I needed a studio to film some different things. And so we built the dojo so that we could do some online material to sell, for our part of our business. And the dojo has been our savior, because all of the main points, the Jigoro philosophy of what should, what judo should entail, and the fact that it should be part and parcel of everyday life, and you should be able to attribute a lot of the ethics to everyday life, and it's been exactly like that. This dojo has been unbelievable because it's very quiet, it's very peaceful, and my wife was an former Olympic athlete judo for judo as well. And so we have been doing a lot of our online stuff in there, but we've also just been sitting in there and just the piece of the dojo has been quite formidable. It's been amazing, great for us. And yes, I think the reverence that it has given us has been tremendous.
Your way of adapting to whatever happened, and you fought through it in a sense.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things to do ever is redirect, you know, and some people have had to redirect their living, their work completely. Yeah. Some people have had to make minor adjustments. Many people have been working from home, and you know, so then they, of course, they say, well, will we ever go back into work where the offices are empty, and will we ever go back to that? We can do it all from home. But now they're starting to realize that actually they need to get a balance. Yes. And, you know, it's like trying to do judo in the garden. It doesn't always work, and it doesn't work if it's in the house. It's much better if we're in the dojo, you know, and so it kind of, it's getting the balance right. And I think that getting the balance right is the most important thing.
Yeah, I was able, for example, I was able to grow my channel because I was at home, and so it was a very good way to adapt. So I hope there's going to be something in the future that really, you know, pursues this aspect of people's lives, you know, the mental aspect. I do believe that judo can offer a lot. I hope I think the problem now is we are lacking methodology, like how to go about this. I think that's the main problem.
I agree with you. I mean, I'm trying to get myself involved and trying to be of help, and I've offered help to a few people, and it's, I think, getting to the right people and getting the right message across. And I think that that's the important thing. I mean, I have had several situations in my life, like I've said to you, where it's been very difficult. I've never felt suicidal. And even when it became difficult, I knew that I had to get up and change and do something, you know. But I think some people, I can understand why it goes too far. And then it becomes increasingly more difficult, you know, and but there's always hope. And I think that that is an important message that I want to help to put across as well.
Yeah, me too, because like I said, this is something that has touched family members, friends, and myself. So I do want to see it grow more, hopefully in the next few years. So there's another thing, you know, speaking of, you know, feeling powerful and confident, I want to talk more about self-defense and how to go about it. So recently, we all know, you know, the hajime and the shido, etc. It's not really reflective of what might happen on the street as altercation and aggression. So, you know, when something happens, there's no referee that's going to go hajime, for example. Recently, I had the pleasure to talk with jiu-jitsu master or teacher Pedro Valente, where he dedicates a lot of his philosophy or his, you know, teaching in the form of self-defense. And he told me about the 5 points that he follows. First one being temiwaza, nagewaza, katamewaza. So he says something that's very important: surprise attacks, whatever it may be. And finally, you know, philosophy, ethics, you know, the education, not just, you know, everything's physical. So very, very reflective of, you know, if you read Mind Over Muscle, you would see that are found within it, or the game of Jiu-Jitsu by Yuki Utani. I want to talk about, for example, where we have something in France called the 20 imposed. We have like 20 attacks. There are 4 different series of 5 attacks. You have between striking, grabs, and weapons, I believe, and also the attacks of Goshinjutsu. My point is he said something to me that really hit home in a sense. He said, these are something that we should constantly be training, regardless of what your goal is, to be a champion or we should all, you know, train this aspect, because eventually that's what it's for. For example, the attacks of Goshin Jutsu, the attacks of the 20 imposed, they should be done, in my opinion, regularly. Just like, you know, if I do, you know, my seonage at yellow belt, say, it's not going to be my seonage at Godan, for example. And the same for these self-defense attacks and how do I respond to them. I can be a white belt in them and I can be a black belt in them. And in order to really constantly evolve in them and really anticipate surprise attacks, or, you know, for example, now if someone grabs me like this, my first response is gonna be like, hey, that's Judo. And, you know, but that's what happens on the streets, for example. I know that there's the fighting films, Judo for self-defense, where they do like these grabs and chokes, and you see Yasuhiro Yamashita training as a student. But, you know, these seminars are done a few times a year. But again, it's, in my opinion, there should be a constant curriculum. Not all of us are Olympic athletes. For example, that's like saying, I'm going to do Uchimata 3 times a year and expect myself to be efficient. That's not going to happen. We know that.
No.
So is there in the works, maybe, I don't know, in the future, very similar to a mental health approach, but for self-defense, a curriculum that might, you know, help with this? Maybe every Saturday morning we can do these attacks and then finish off with just rounds of randori or whatever. Is there something in the works of this? Might be.
Well, the first thing is that when it comes to self-defense, I mean, for me, it's about preparation anyway. Preparation builds confidence, you know, so the more efficient you are in your whatever techniques they are, whether it's nagikomi or grip fighting or kumakata, anything attack and defense is about how much you do. I mean, practice doesn't make perfect. Of course, it makes permanent. So it has to be good practice. It's important that it's good practice. I have a very dear friend of mine. He's a really 7th Dan karate guy, and he does quite a lot in self-defense. And so he came on quite a few of my courses to learn close contact things. I think close contact is important because most fighting situations end up very close, and, you know, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, it's all over. It doesn't last that long, really. But so he said to me, he said, there's only one thing that can prepare you for a street fight. And he said, and that's fighting in the street. You know, and fight or flight comes in whether you're a 7th degree black belt, or whether you are a yellow belt, or whether you're a child, or somebody who's very experienced. I found that I have had certain situations where, even with my ability, you know, that the fight or flight comes into play in everyday life. And I think that you get certain people that are very good in self-defense that are in those situations more often. I'm not, you know, so actually the more often for me, the better, you know, it would be better. So I think that there are a couple of things. I think that it would be nice to have, I mean, we have anyway with the Gokyo and with the different techniques from Tachiwaza to Newaza, the transition. Transition, of course, is absolutely imperative. A lot of people don't talk about the transition, but one of my biggest advantages was that my transition from standing down to ground, and this isn't for jiu-jitsu, this is for judo attack, was very, very fast. And the reason was that I trained it every randori. Whether they allowed it or not in the randori, whether they did tachiwaza and then newaza, I would always follow it down from tachiwaza to newaza. And the transition is one of the keys, I think. You know, it's keeping contact and making sure that you have these contacts. So I think that there are lots of things that we could probably do. And I was just thinking about it now, actually, that we were thinking of all the different seminars that we could do from the dojo that we have here. Of course, specialized seminars, coach to coach education, tachiwaza, newaza, jujigatami. We could do all the specialized stuff. But I think that one of the key points is the transition, standing down to ground, and how to connect the two. And I think that they're important. But yes, there's going to be seminars specifically for the transitioning from standing down to ground, technical expertise in standing, technical expertise in newaza as well, and the differences between judo newaza and also BJJ newaza.
Okay.
Because there's a time difference, and you know, so I hope I answered some of your questions. But I'm of the thinking of my friend, you know, who he's very good. He's been in a lot of, he used to work the doors, and
bouncers have the craziest stories.
Yeah, and he has some crazy stories, and he's a reformed, you know, so he would never go back to that way of life. But it was a very violent and horrific time of his life, and one that he writes about, and also he's written books about. His name's Jeff Thompson, so you can look him up, and he's a very well-read, very well-educated man, and he has some great philosophies on self-defense.
Okay. So, for example, you talk about the transition and how to get close, and I understand osaikomi is a very valuable tool when it comes to controlling someone and really not hurting them. And also, you know, there's nothing more frustrating than being stuck under someone and you really cannot do anything. So I think we all know the feeling.
Yeah.
But for example, like stuff like unconventional atemiwaza, you know, not just do this, you know, like a slap, a legitimate slap, or, you know, someone coming and like a really big shove, you know, these types of scenarios, someone cornering me into a wall, you know, there's like, I understand people are training them as well as, you know, your regular randori and the stuff that we do, you know, like the Olympic judo style. So do you think training these will not, you know, help in any way, or like is it just, I don't know, like I don't know what's going to be in the seminar, I really don't know, but don't you think that there should be a room for training these, you know, scenarios?
I think so. I mean, you've got to think about how often are we ever in a situation like that? Not that often, hopefully. If we're training those kind of situations, and like I say, Jeff Thompson, he had a group of students, and they often at my club, actually, I mean, they would train these specific scenarios. And they would, but they were doing it 3-4 times a week. You know, so it's not just once every week or once every 2 weeks, it was all the time. Yes. And the power of command as well was part of it, because the expression, because sometimes asserting yourself confidently is very important, you know, because it's always the ones that don't want any trouble, or, you know, go into flight mode. They're normally the ones that people go for, you know, but the ones that assert themselves, and I remember that from his seminars was very key, because he was very assertive and very loud and very aggressive, and I think that they would think twice, you know. But I think it's how often and obviously the level as well of instruction, because of course that plays a big part, whether it's judo, karate, whether it's boxing, or, you know, whatever defense or self-defense that you practice, you're as good as the instruction that you get. So get the best instruction is a really key point.
Yeah, I mean, we cannot just start the program and just like, hey, you know, go do self-defense. No, you cannot. No, you never know what comes to fruition. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's something that I've never thought about it. Okay, so this is this is something that's like, even if I just mention it, like our next subject, even if I just mention it, I know, people have so many different opinions about it, and so many sometimes not so nice opinions about it, like and that's the grabbing below the belt. When I talked about this, like what happened, and I showed a small clip of the Empty Mind film. I don't know if you watched it, the Empty Mind film, the Judo episode, where one of the Kodokan instructors talks about, what happened behind the curtains, in a sense. The popularity, say, competition in the Olympics between wrestling and judo. So judo had to really, reinvent it. Not necessarily reinvent, but really show its expression. That's these beautiful, effortless, picturesque throws, or these, breathtaking, swift ashiwazas. And I think they did a good job. I think they won that popularity battle. But I think this is a very complicated topic, because again,
I'll ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a question. All right. So who are the ones that are complaining about it? So let me tell you this, first of all, is that it was the IOC that came to the IJF, International Judo Federation, and said that wrestling and judo looked the same because it was starting to bend over like this.
So
but judo looked like wrestling with jackets on. So they said you need to give it its identity back. So the original concepts of judo were that being able to execute techniques from good posture, good body positioning, and from an upright position, or sacrifice. But so the ones that are complaining are the grapplers. Now, you already said this earlier when we were talking, and the grapplers are up in arms about it because, of course, they can't compete in both. Now it's more difficult for them to compete as a wrestler and in judo. So the judoka can adapt from judo down to the wrestling, because they learned to do judo from a standing position, from a more upright position. But now the wrestlers can't pick the legs, so they can't do a single leg, double leg. So what happens is they are finding it more difficult to compete in both wrestling and the judo. So it's the grapplers that are pretty upset about it. The judo fighters, the ones that preferred leg grabs and picking the legs, were a little bit put out, but some of the best ones adapted like that. Yeah. And because, and for me, the reason that I think that it's excellent is that I believe that we should, our sport does go from use of feet, beautiful ashiwaza, and the mechanics of being able to throw somebody from a standing position rather than a bent over position. And I think that to be able to project 90 kilos into the air with movement and correction of balance, all right, is pure skill. It's one of the most skillful things. To be able to take somebody's legs or rugby tackle them over, I think that's one of the easiest things, isn't it? If we don't know, if we have no knowledge, then one of the easiest ways of getting somebody down is to dive to the legs and just take the legs away. It's one of the easiest things. One of the hardest things is to use your hips and your body movement to go underneath somebody and to project them upwards. Yeah. It's one of the most difficult things. So I think that it's in definitely the right order now. And I think that if the grapplers and the wrestlers want to be able to do both of the sports, then they should learn how to do judo technique from a judo perspective, and then be able to adapt to their wrestling when they do the wrestling. I mean, I did judo to wrestling, and so I was able to adapt. I did the British Championships, and I did, so I was, I didn't go fight internationally, but we had many of our judo fighters that did European championships. Morris Allen was one of them. He competed in, he's a 7th Dan judo. He competed in the 72 Olympic Games for freestyle. Wow. And yeah, as well. And yeah, so I mean, we have a lot of the judo players that, you know, that adapt in, but it was getting too messy. And so for me, and I'm being quite strong with my opinions here, all right? For me, it's definitely in the right order now. And the other thing is that if you have a look at people saying, oh, Kataguruma, Teguruma, not allowed, you know, so maybe Teguruma is one of the only techniques that is not in at the moment. But all of the top judoka have adapted to uranagis and pickups. There's still some amazing pickups.
Shiragoshi is a very underrated one.
Yeah, Tsurigoshi, you know, but I mean, all of it, just adjusting the hands, not below the belt, but just above the belt. Just a small adjustment, you know, but these great fighters make an adjustment like that.
Yeah, there is also the argument. I find it's a bit of a solid one. It's that, you know, you are very good above the belt, but when you know, say you go up against a wrestler in a, you know, open grappling match, like you're gonna be startled. You're not gonna defend your lower half, and also you don't even know how to attack the lower half anymore.
Well, I was in the 80s, so actually, when I was 5, fought lots of the wrestlers all the time, fighting wrestlers. My defense came from the hips, and it came from posture, and from my kumikata, from my gripping. And the point is that if you have a situation where you've got wrestler against judoka, open match, as yes, you've just said. The difference is that if you put a jacket on the wrestler and the judoka, you'll have a different outcome than if you take the jackets off. Yes. I wrestled with a very good friend of mine called Noel Loban, who went to the 84 games. He was 3rd place in the 84 games. And so he wanted to put a jacket on me for do judo. And I just gripped him so that he couldn't attack. Yeah. Because of the kumikata with the judogi. When we took the jackets off, he mauled me. You know, he just was all over me, you know, in a different way. And I had to adapt. But like I said to you, and we talked about it earlier, I adapted very, very quickly. And my wrestling game went up, you know, considerably within the, you know, the 5-7 minutes that we were fighting. But he was literally all over me, you know, so it's all about adapting to certain situations. And so, for example, if I know that I've got somebody with an amazing single leg or an amazing double leg, you know, then I will just make sure that I have a little bit more distance, you know, so the tactics comes into play. And it depends. The other thing, of course, it depends on what rules you're playing, whether you're playing wrestling rules or judo rules.
See, that's the other thing, is that those people with very strong opinions, the grapplers, it's always them saying, you know, if judokas went into the other realm, you know, BJJ or freestyle or whatever, but I still haven't found, or very rarely, someone that goes from these disciplines to judo with judo now and, you know, see them, you know, just dominate the game, because, you know, we're so restrictive, or we're so afraid of wrestlers, as they start to talk about. But, you know, yes, that's the thing. Like, no one is willing to come to judo and really, you know, stand up with them. But, you know, judokas constantly, historically, whether it's MMA, no-gi grappling, wrestling, they have taken off their jackets and went into the, you know, uncomfortable zone. They stepped out of their comfort zone, and they've achieved many things. Yes, not all of them, but they've achieved many things. But no one of these grapplers, maybe wrestlers, have come to judo and really, especially with judo now, no one has come and really, stayed standing on his feet. No one.
No, but and that's because it's the other way around. What happens now is that we have some of the young judo players that don't know this.
Yes.
They only know this, which that's a good situation to be in. But for a wrestler to come over to judo is more difficult now than it was when they could take the legs. And that's my point, is that's why that they are not so happy. Some of them liked to do both. They like to do the wrestling. Fitz Davis, who was also, he was the British wrestling champion, and he went to the 84 Olympic Games. He did both. He did judo as well. And of course, he could have a certain amount of success in the judo as well. But he was a leg grabber, and he relied on his tegurumas and his single leg, double leg. And the techniques he performed in judo weren't judo techniques. They were wrestling techniques.
He adapted his wrestling to the judogi.
Well, it's exactly the same. If I go into wrestling, when I wrestled, I actually was at lots of people.
And now that's the thing. You see a lot of instructionals coming out in freestyle that are adding, drop ochigari, dash barai, kochigari.
Yes.
So I think like it's not just them having the influence, but also it's the other way around. So
yeah. I mean, I commentate as well. At the next Olympic Games, I'll be commentating freestyle and Greco-Roman, as well as the judo. So I find that really interesting. I did it at the last Olympics and at the European Games. And if you have a look at the difference between the Greco and freestyle, and the techniques, just by the difference in the rules of not being able to take the legs.
The entire expressions, yeah.
The techniques that come out just different. You can change one rule and you can change the game.
Yes, and that's another thing that I want to talk about with the upright posture is it can translate very good to self-defense, not just the upright posture, but also good kumikata. Debilitating someone with a very strong grip without even throwing them and staying upright, that can have a lot of good, in my opinion, when it transitions to street self-defense. When you get the clinch or you get the distance closed. And also, when someone does wrestling and only wrestling, and they're not really accustomed to someone really gripping them and just dragging them with their clothing, I think that's going to cause a lot of problem.
Yeah, well, I think wrestlers find it very difficult with the jacket, because of the gripping side of it. Because we use the jacket. The top judoka have really good kumikata, have good gripping strategies, are able to initiate movement through the jacket. And if you haven't got that, then you have to initiate movement through the grip in a different way if you haven't got cloth. So we do rely on cloth, very much so. We do.
But then, you're gonna have someone, oh yeah, well, what are you gonna do if you fight on a beach? Like there's always something, like you're not gonna satisfy everyone. I think every art is lacking in something, but at the same time, in order to lack in something, it's specialized in something else.
Sure, but I just want to do judo. I don't want to fight in the beach or on the street. I just want to do judo.
Or what are you gonna do when you go into MMA? I don't want to go into MMA.
I don't want to do it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're not all Kayla Harrison, and but no, it doesn't interest me. People ask me, whether I would have been interested. It would have interested me because it really does. The close contact and the fact that the strikers are so. I mean, some of the UFC fighters are amazing,
ferocious.
Yeah,
like those head kicks. I cannot imagine.
No, I mean, the skills that are coming out are amazing, and they're good grapplers, and But was that for me? No, it wouldn't have been for me. I specialized in my own sport, and that was it.
Yeah, I think if if you're so interested, I say street self-defense, or you're doing judo, like a lot of us are doing it, not only because we love the art, but also we want to be able to defend ourselves in case something happens.
Just in case.
Yeah, I think picking up something alongside something like sabat or kickboxing would also accustom you not only to get gripped and tight grips, but also if someone's throwing a few strikes at you, that would also complete it. Obviously, the weapons is another discussion that no matter how long you train, I think it's always going to be surprising and dangerous. So again, I'm not a weapons expert, so I'm not going to really talk about it. But in terms of street self-defense, I think judo can do the trick. Just add a little bit of striking, I would say, reflex.
I think that's a really good point. The striking is probably one of the things. If I play with anything now, it's the striking part. With fists, not with the legs. I've got no knees left. My hips as well. So it's very much. But I think that being able to gauge distance and space is something that I've worked with a lot, with my judo. And so, for me, having space, somebody coming within my space is not what I want. Yeah.
I think if you see, I'm not talking about UFC or pancrase, I'm talking about a regular fight. I've seen many of those. They all start, distant. They get into each other's faces, a few slaps, get interchanged. And then there's like a clinch, and then it falls to the ground. I think from the clinch and onto the ground, I think we got that covered. So again, like I said, a little bit of, protecting your space, throwing a few good hands. I think that would benefit all judokas.
I think you're right. And I have every intention. So we might do some different skills, because I've got a lot of friends of mine. I've got a very good weapons guy who's very good with weapons, and so I'd like to do an international course, where we've got different disciplines that people could go to, over a weekend, and that I think that would be a nice situation. So we do close contact, we do balance, we do striking, we do weapons, we do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's needed.
So watch this space. It might be here.
Oh, okay. Your dojo. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Okay, good. So go back to the leg thing. The 2010-2012 rule set, was it, I would say, a healthy middle ground? Because you could, in order to get to the leg, you have to really engage in kumikata, and then go for a throw, and then finish it with like a little leg pick, a failed new kataguruma, finish with like the leg or serenage, or kochi with kibisugaishi.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think that's more of a healthy ground? Because that's the thing that I talked about on my channel quite a lot, is something I call technical heritage, meaning the stuff that gets phased out of competition for whatever reason, they just stop being taught, and eventually it's kind of like we lost them in a sense. So, and that's a way of keeping them at least in the minds of the people. Like, for example, people think that leg locks came to BJJ or all these disciplines was actually from just catch as catch can and Sambo. They never even knew that judo actually, before 1922, they were doing straight ankle locks and knee bars and all that stuff.
I think that I've got some dear friends of mine, high level, who would quite gladly accept leg grabs back.
Yeah.
But the problem was that I think that generally, if we allowed it, then everybody would start diving for the legs again, even low level. And I think that it would then, it wouldn't look good. I think that the IOC wouldn't like it either. And I think that by Marius Visa deciding that he would change it by just changing the leg grabbing situation, I think that he saved judo in the Olympic movement. I think that if we weren't careful, we were going to be like karate. Karate now is split sections, different forms of karate, some that concentrate more on punching, some more on kicking. The different forms of karate were the reason that it didn't get into the Olympic Games. The first time it got into the Olympic Games or anything anywhere near was Taekwondo, but that was a Korean sport and introduced in Seoul in 1988. But I think that we would lose our identity, and I think it would have put us out of the Olympic Games. I'm convinced of that. So I think that we had a big meeting. There was a huge meeting. Kodokan, IJF, International Judo Federation, Mr. Yamashita, Mr. Uemura, there was Kosei Inui, there was myself, Ezio Gamba, Alexander Yaskevich. There were the top fighters in the whole world had a meeting about the leg grabs. And in the end, it was decided that rather than just allow one or two situations which would develop, because you've got to understand, right, that if as a top fighter, if I allow you to go one part into a gray area of what is allowed and what is not allowed, guaranteed that within an hour, 10 different things will be out. They will find a different way of executing a leg grab or something from different directions. And, you know, and so it was decided that better not to have it than have one or two situations, because we all went for maybe this situation's good, this one here, take Guruma if it goes upwards, you know, there were lots of different things that, but in the end, we knew that the gray area, and there are always gray areas in rules, if you allow too many gray areas, then the top coaches and the top fighters will always take advantage. So we try and make it as black and as white as possible. That's the idea.
But now I think you like opened the door a little bit with the, you know, if I'm grabbing the sleeve, I can hug the leg. But,
well, that's exactly my point. So, so what happens is now, in the end, because we've opened, you know, so what happened was somebody had the sleeve. So now we've had two fighters going down and catching the leg, or the arm hooking the leg while they're grabbing the sleeve. So it's again the gray area into the realms of somebody taking advantage. So in the end, what do? Do you stop any kind of touching the leg, or do you allow that? Do you allow the other possibilities that they're going to come up with next week? All right, you're right, it's opened up something, and it has been open to discussion since the last event. Yeah. So in some ways, they're very clever, and it's extreme. It's brilliant because it's innovative and it's progressive, but in the end, it's sometimes something that they do that, you know, we look at and say, well, because we look at it as referee supervisors and go, well, do we allow that or not? Technically, he has the sleeve. Yeah. But also technically, he's touching the leg. So yeah, better to have it or not have it.
But yeah, I do think, you know, before it was like, if you just like if your hand just landed or like you touch your forearm, it's immediately Hatsukomake. It was a bit.
Yeah, but it's
I know I was trying to really enforce it, like, you know, just don't even think about it. I know, but it's, I think, you know, they learned their lesson in a sense.
Well, the thing is, you're right. I mean, you know, the point is, we know that the hand can sometimes accidentally touch the below, and we can look at that and we can say, benefit of the doubt, we let it go. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right, but then 10 people do it.
Yeah.
Immediately within the same tournament, oh, they allowed it. It's okay. You know that. So 10 people do it. So better to stop it and be strict so they know. It's
like
really difficult, very difficult. But sometimes it's better if you have a rule, if you enforce it strongly, then people listen.
Yeah, you had that segment on Superstar Judo where you talk about Mariyama's leg block, where he was losing the grip fighting battle. He was on his knees. He just put his forearm on the quad of his opponent, and it was immediately Hansukumaki. It was clear that he was like pushing him. Yeah. So it's kind of like when someone's trying to go for Haragoshi and I grab the belt and I just keep my hand extended like this.
Well, and also you've got to understand that if I do an attack and somebody takes my leg, it might be the thing that prevents me from throwing for Ippon.
Yeah.
For sure. So, you know, and so it works kind of two ways. It is a difficult one, you're right. And it's the most difficult one when applying techniques, because many people talk about benefit of the doubt. Like, so if we have the edge, somebody goes out and you say, well, they will both do, you know, so benefit of the doubt, don't give anything. So they come back in and you let them fight, and then they go immediately back because they were allowed to do it.
Okay.
But if you stop it and you penalize, they don't do it. Everything stays in the middle. Very difficult.
Why is the skirt included? Like, for example, if I grab the skirt, it's under the belt. Let's say it's under the belt. If I grab the skirt and did kataguruma.
No, but if the skirt is out the belt,
yes,
you
but
can grab
if
the
it's
skirt.
out, then I can use it. But
yes,
why? What's the reasoning behind this?
Just, I mean, you have to find a line, you know. So the thing is that if it's out, sometimes wherever you're grabbing, if you take it by mistake, then is it by mistake? No, it's just the rule. You know, all I can say is we try and give lines. Not every line is good. You know, there are a few things that we're going to look at after the Olympic Games.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know, for me, I'd like to see the Wazari, beginning of the Wazari sorted. But anyway, there are certain things that you know, we need to look at for sure.
Yeah, because like people have all sorts of rule ideas. I thought of a few myself. Maybe just in golden score. Maybe if it's only a medal, if it's a medal match, then you can go for it, or you know, all types of things. But you know, the idea is to really keep the upright posture, you know, judo now. But in the certain scenarios, for example, golden score of the final, let's say, then you can go because it's all out. You're gonna do everything for that gold medal to see who really wants it more, who's more skilled on the like gripping the entire body. Again, there's all sorts of ideas, but in terms of, you know, expressing judo the way it is, I'd say I'm with, because it does create this very unique expression, no doubt. I think it did its job.
I think it did its job, and I think that it's not perfect, but I think it's definitely advantageous to judo. And you know, and this is my main point, is that for judoka and for the Jigoro Kano ideals, it certainly is, for our sport, it's a good thing. You know, for wrestling, if I went into wrestling and said that I wanted to change the rules to suit me, then every wrestler would say, you know, well, stick to your own game. You know, so it kind of works both ways.
Yeah, like if you look at English pugilism, it was like all over the place. If you look at it historically, before that, the Queensberry rule, etc. But now it's a game of its own. English boxing, you know, it's crafted the hands more. It's before they would throw out of the arena, and then the fight goes out of the arena. And I'm sure it wasn't like those like today's fights. Like you see, like he's really crafted his striking, he's really crafted his grappling, his submissions. But I think, you know, Queensberry rules, obviously it limited the fight, but at the same time, it really crafted the hands. And I think Judo, the effortless Ippon, was, I would say, far more crafted. Like if I now watch Fabio Basile, it's like a work of art in motion, for example.
Yeah,
Shimata, even though it was before, he never relied on that, you know.
yes.
It really showed, you know, Ippon Judo before, like if it was a thing, whether, you know, to the legs or not. Like you can take his DVD now, his box set, and still apply it today, no problem.
I think it makes us focus, and I think that's an important thing. Sometimes when we focus on specific techniques, and I always tried to train a technique so that I could do it. I didn't train 10 techniques, a bit of each. I trained very, very hard and very meticulously on a specific technique, and then I added another one to it, and then I added my. But you know, the interesting thing is that with all of my students, the feet, the use of the ashiwaza, is the equivalent of the hands setting up the jab or the hook or the uppercut for boxing. You know, it really is an important part of our balance and our strategy. And so, you know, we've just developed the ashiwaza skimmer, you know, which is to get the foot in the right way and the sweeping action in the right way. And I just did a demonstration with my uki, first time I've had him there for a while. So just to relate the use of the ashiwaza to a person, to an actual person. But, you know, I think learning to use the feet, correcting the balance, is integral to our sport.
I agree. That's the thing. For example, other grapplers who would, for example, critique the leg grab thing, for them, in order to demonstrate their specialty, they have, I would say, put something on the side as well. For example, BJJ, the best at submitting people, they cannot, there's no way they can compete in the beauty of takedowns like with us. There's just no way, because they sacrifice the time for takedowns in order to really craft their submission from like head to toe, basically. Wrestlers, they pin and they throw really well, but no submissions. Again, it's on the expense of those two. Other disciplines, same thing. So it's not just judo. It's they talk about this as if judo did like committed this ultimate sin. Now, I agree, you know, in exams or whatever, you can't. There's a room for them. For example, we have like a self-defense exam for showdown here. You can, for example, go for skuinage, for example, with the headlock. Okay, yes, but in terms of really expressing an art, going a certain direction, I think every art did that, not just judo.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I said to you earlier that I really enjoy doing the freestyle and the Greco at the Olympics, you know, and some of the things that they are doing are amazing. I mean, you know, I have unbelievable appreciation for the skill and the physical, the physicality behind, you know, both the sports and what's required. But, you know, I mean, if I went into wrestling in a standing position, I'm sure they would punish me. They would, you know, so I would have to do that.
Yeah.
And I think the same, if they come into judo now, they have to do that, you know, and they have to learn how to throw.
Exactly, 100%. Wait, until what time you have?
About another 5 minutes.
All right, we can. So thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
It's really nice to have an insight, you know, at the top level, what they're thinking, what they're doing for judo in the future. on the mats and also outside of the mats. That's really important for me and a lot of people too. I was very happy to discuss, these very serious topics with you. And
well, I hope that I've kind of covered them. I hope I haven't upset anybody. The idea is not to upset anybody or the wrestling fraternity, because I have so many people, great friends that do both. Yeah, they do both the wrestling and the judo. But I think now very important that if they're going to do judo, that they just have a good club, that teaches them how to, and of course the stance is different, and I pointed out to you earlier that as far as defense is concerned, just because I'm in an upright position doesn't mean I haven't got defense. We work out our different forms of defense. My defense used to come from the hips and from body positioning. And if you have a look at any of the top judo fighters, the ones like Ono, Inui, Yamashita Sensei, and Mariyama, they have incredible posture and very difficult to attack. Very difficult, really difficult to because they have different body positioning and they have great hip movement. They defend with their hips and their body and their hands as well. It's not just the hands, but it's everything.
Yes, like if you watch the Masters, Shmailov versus Mariyama, Mariyama never bent down for a second. Not for a second.
Never. Head up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sensei. Would you like to say anything? I'd like to add.
No, I'd just like to say that it's been an absolute pleasure. We've covered some different topics. Self-defense, one I haven't done before. But funny, because on the self-defense side of it, I mean, I'm not somebody who needs self-defense in as that I'm not that kind of, I'm not a fighter like that. But I had a very dear friend of mine, like I say, Jeff Thompson, who was, he was a fighter, street fighter, and a good karate man. He did a year full-time judo with me. And he did a year's full-time judo with me because he wanted to learn how to throw properly. And it was one of his main things. He was there every day. He was there 4 times a week and never missed a training. Just came as one of the students, and it was amazing. The difference in 1 year with him was amazing.
Yes, that's dedication.
It's all about education, isn't it? It's about education, adapting to certain situations. And I think also it's a mindset, just finishing with what we started with. And I think that if we can, in our own minds, be happy with what we're doing, I think that that is a key point, and I think that it's when we find it difficult to change direction that we start to have problems, and I'm in a good place. I'm at one stage in my life, I was, in not such a good place, and managed to kind of come through it. And I have an amazing marriage. We've been married 21 years, well, nearly 21 years together, 19 years married. I have three children, wonderful children, one 35, 2 daughters, 18 and 17.
God bless.
And 2 grandchildren. So two grandsons. So everything is good.
God bless you and your family.
Thank you.
I think that's it. I said everything I.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope that we will send this through to you. Nikki's just come in now.
I'll send the email. Yes. All right.
Okay. Perfect.
Stop the recording. Yes.
Yeah, we will stop it now. Nikki's just come in. See, she comes in at the right time.
I hope it's studied anyways.